control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes in with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. You made it. We're here. This is it. The lights are on. The camera's going. The microphone is live. And so am I so far. So we got that going for us. And thank you guys so much for being here and being a part of the shows. Hello to everybody rolling into the chat room. Good to see you guys. Awesome turnout already. That's just phenomenal. You guys humble me. Every time I see those numbers just climb, it's like, wow, really? It still just never gets old to me. So, thank you all for being here and being a part of the shows. And I guess I'm about all ready, and I hope you're ready too, because it's time for bed. All right, here we go. We are underway. Hope you guys are doing great. It was a busy day for me, but I also was all wound out. I slept so terrible last night, but I'm still here with you because this is just one of the big loves of my life, is doing the portal, and I'm really honored that you guys are here with me. I know I say that a lot, but honest to God, it just still boggles my imagination. It's like, wow, really, people are here. It's like amazing. And it still impresses the hell out of me that there are that many people out there that are interested in what I have to say. So it's really a humbling and cool experience. But got a great show lined up for you guys. I hope I'm going to do my best to keep you entertained. Lots of ghost stories tonight. And, of course, if you have one of your very own or any kind of paranormal story of your very own that you'd like to share, please feel free to call in. The number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. And if you're going through the course of the show and you're like, oh, wait, I should tell them about this story. And you're like, what's the number? Just right up here, right up there. And those little numbers above the little screen on your YouTube channel, that's where the call-in number is. And, of course, if you feel like helping the portal and giving some love in the cash sense, then the donate text, of course, is right up there. So all kinds of options. Not that it's mandatory, not that I even, require that, but it certainly does help if you find that you're able to. That's cool because, we've got some big plans on the way, and big plans require big means usually. So anyway, this weekend coming up, I got a great experience just around the corner, and unfortunately Don won't be able to join me, but it's going to be a pretty cool thing nonetheless. Dan Pruitt is going to meet me, and we're going to go over to Duke's stomping grounds over there in Montana, and we are going to be doing a little bit of Bigfoot and then a lot of ghost investigating in a ghost town up in the mountains of Montana called Coloma, and we'll be up there for a couple days this weekend, and Dan's bringing all the toys and bells and whistles, and we'll see what we can find, and hopefully we'll find some great material to bring back to you guys here on the show. And I'm going to do some attempts at streaming live. Now on Saturday night, Don's going to come in and man the show here in the studio, and when he's doing that, I'm going to do my best to connect to him in the studio here and then talk to you guys and let you guys know what's going on out there for as long as I can. So we'll see how this all works out. It's really an arbitrary plan in my head. There's a lot of things that I haven't figured out and maybe won't figure out. But I'm hoping it goes pretty smooth nonetheless. I got some more testing to do before this weekend to see what my options are, but we'll bring as much of it live to you as we are capable of. And Friday night I'll try to do the same. I don't know how much of a show I'm going to be able to give you Friday night, but I'm definitely going to try to stream in for as long as we can on Friday night, depending on the signal, depending on the situation. But I'm going to be doing it remotely just through my phone because that's the only means I have to accomplish that. And Duke says there is a good signal up there, believe it or not, because it's on the top of the world. It's on the top of a mountain. So we should be able to stream Friday night, a good portion of the night that would be the normal Friday show, to you from on site there in Coloma. And then again on Saturday night when Don's here, man, in the studio. So we're going to do as much as we can for as long as we're able. So I hope you guys will be a part of that. Again, my apologies in advance because so much of this is absolutely untested, unproven. I've never done anything like this before. I've never done a remote portal at all. So I'm kind of throwing caution to the wind and saying, hey, we're going to try it. And we'll see where we end up. I hope it ends up being fairly successful. But if it's not, please accept my apologies in advance. I have no idea what I'm walking into for sure. So, but we'll do everything we can to bring you the best show we are able to. But in the meantime, if there isn't a regular Friday show, feel free to sit back and watch one of the archives on our YouTube channel here. So, but anyway, that's the plans coming up this weekend. And, more to come as I'm aware of it. So, but also if you have something that you'd like to share but don't want to call in to the show, you can always email paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. I've been receiving more regular emails from listeners, and that's been really cool. Some great experiences. I just got another one in, but I probably will read emails maybe a week from Friday night on that show, but we'll see. We'll see how many come in, and if it's possible we could read them on a Wednesday. I just like to share your guys' emails on nights that we're also plugged into the network on tfrlive.com, which is our mother network for the show. That's where we all started. And when we're on that network, we're also plugged into iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. So it's just a much bigger audience, and I think it's just the best material possible. So anyway, guys, we'll let you know more as I know more, but that is the plan. So, all right. So let's see quickly who's here. We got Bama BF, Barry Kustichin. Good to see you, Barry. Beth Fierce, and it's good to see you, Bama, as well. Beth Fierce, Bigfoot in Germany, Bigfoot, Michigan, Rob. Duke is in here. Duke, Brian Sullivan, Cameron, Cha-Cha, Isaac Areola, Josh Jacobs, Louis Ta, MCAT, Mary Brim, Old Spirit Art. That's a new name. Good to see you, Old Spirit Art. Thanks for coming in. Pat Studio, Renee Cruz, Suzanne Page, and the Weird Desk US. And if I didn't read your name, please let me know. Oh, Gemini, you just came in. Good to see you, Gemini. Wonderful to see you. So let's get to the stories and see if we can keep you entertained. All right. So this is one that I was going to read last night, but it was really long, so I'll read it now. All right. This one comes from Colorado, ladies and gentlemen, and it says, my great-grandpa was a great man. He was the happiest person I had ever met. He loved his family more than anything and valued the worth of $1. It was a wonderful artist, and he always put his whole heart into everything that he ever tried and took on, which I guess is why he felt the need to build his home from the ground up. I wish I could tell you what year it was built, but honestly, I just don't have any clue. It was in our family for some time, though, and my grandmother and her sisters grew up here, as did my mom and my brothers, and I've lived here for the majority of our childhood. It was a beautiful home in a beautiful area, and he picked a very historic part of Denver to build the home as well. About 2 houses down from Molly Brown's house, actually, which really has nothing to do with the story. I just thought it was interesting. My earliest memories of the home go back to about age of 5 or 6, and we would visit while my great-grandparents were still there, and I would always smell like an interesting mixture of cookies and perfume from my great-grandma And my great-grandfather would be sitting in his chair, sketching a pastel drawing with his fingers stained 10 different shades of blue or red, and he would always have the radio tuned to the jazz station and would get up and hum to the song while trying to dance with my great-grandmother, who would giggle and say, "Oh, Joe, stop," and sit back down. I seem to be rambling, though. I'll get back to the story. I've spoken with my grandmother, who had lived there most of her life, and her being a big skeptic says she never experienced anything there, which makes sense considering the house was built from the ground up by my grandfather. Though when my mother was young, that wasn't the case. When she was about 4, she found an imaginary friend named Tabby, who, according to my mom, was the cause of all the weird things going on. She slept upstairs in a large room with her cousin, and they shared a bathroom together, and whenever my mom would get up in the morning to go to the bathroom, the carpet, don't ask me why my grandfather carpeted a bathroom, I don't know, it would be completely soaked. She would go ask Teresa, her cousin, what she did to find what she did, and she would find that she was still asleep and claimed to have not gotten up at all. This went on for years, and I'm really not sure if it ever stopped, though this could be explained as a simple plumbing problem, perhaps from putting the carpet in the bathroom. Yeah, that's true. Carpets in a bathroom is not a good plan generally. They hold moisture and mildew. She also said she would hear footsteps going up and then back down the stairs late at night when everyone was asleep. And they would go up, and it would be quiet for a few minutes, and then they would go back down. Just once, almost the same time every night. The one memory that sticks out in her head the most was the day after school. She had a friend over, and quickly ran up the stairs just to drop off her school books, and she looked at her bed and froze, seeing on the bed and pillow a perfect indentation of a small body and a head lying on her bed. She freaked out and leapt down the stairs and slept on Teresa's side of the room after that, shortly after my grandparents and mother moved out to California due to my grandfather's work. Sadly, my great-grandmother passed away when I was very young, and my great-grandfather passed away when I was very young. My great-grandmother was taken to a nursing home, and my mom, dad, and brothers and I moved into their home. My brothers took the room upstairs where my mom and her cousin used to sleep, and I was alone downstairs where my great-grandmother used to sleep, and I distinctly remember one night, while having a real hard time getting to sleep, I heard what sounded like humming coming from the living room. I went out to check, but there was nothing there. This happened a few other times, usually late at night, usually in the living room and sometimes outside. One of my great-grandfather's favorite possessions was this terrible knit tapestry of an owl. It was hideous, and he loved it. No one else wanted it, so when he passed, we just left it in the house in a closet. One day when we returned home, this ugly thing was hanging on the doorknob of the closet, displayed in the exact place my grandfather always had it. My mom was convinced it was Grandpa Joe, but my dad refused to believe it. The tapestry went in the basement closet. As I got older, odd things happened less and less, or I just didn't pay as much attention anymore. Only a few other things stick out in my mind. On weekends, I had the habit of trying to stay up as late as possible and falling asleep on the couch. Usually my dad would wake up and come down and make me go to my room, and this happened one weekend. As usual, I went to bed and thought nothing of it. The next morning, I was talking to my mom, casually mentioning this, and she looked at me like I was insane. I then realized that earlier in the evening, the night before, my brothers and dad had gone camping for the weekend. It was a distinct male voice I heard telling me to go to bed, and at this point my mom was so used to it that she just said, "Oh, it must have been Grandpa Joe." As I grew older, I blossomed in my artistic skills, and I was working on a project for art class and getting incredibly irritated that it wasn't turning out the way I wanted it. In a fit of frustration, I threw the drawing into the garbage, and then I left the house to go to a friend's house. A few hours later, when I returned home, there was the drawing sitting right in the center of my bed. No one else had been home to move it, at least that I'm aware of. My mom, of course, says that this was great-grandfather, the artist, telling me not to give up. Shortly after this, sadly, my great-grandmother passed away, in the nursing home, and it was a week or so that we began smelling that cookie perfume mixture in the house. It would move from room to room, usually going back to my room, but was always very prominent when you walked in the door. The last incident I recall was on Christmas, and it really became a tradition in my home for my parents to turn Christmas music on Christmas Eve and leave it playing all night and into Christmas Day. This particular Christmas, we woke up, and instead of Christmas music playing, it was the old-time jazz that my great-grandfather listened to all the time. The tuner on the radio was set to the same station it was left on, which was always just Christmas music every year. And we couldn't figure out why the station would just change their format all of a sudden. After about a half an hour or so, it changed back to the standard Christmas songs. After that, we all grew up a little, and my parents started going through the separation, which inevitably ended up in them selling the house. There was a lot of fighting going on in the house, and I suspect if my great-grandparents were there, the fighting made them very uncomfortable, so they may have left. We never had another encounter after that, and after the incidents, my mom became fascinated with the paranormal and visited a psychic one day, and the psychic described her imaginary friend Tabby perfectly and even knew her name. Could it be that some of the things we thought my great-grandfather were actually Tabby? And those things that happened before his death, like the indentation of a body of a child on my mom's bed, were those things Tabby? My mom also says quite often she has incredibly vivid dreams of the house, and she can actually feel the cold hard wood of the stairs on her feet, and she's even speculated that maybe she is haunting the people currently living there because of how real her dreams feel. Is it possible that some other little girl in the home is hearing footsteps up and down the stairs late at night? Is it possible that those feet belong to my mom, who is just dreaming and crossed some sort of astral plane or something? My mom certainly thinks that that's the case, and if that's true, then, in retrospect, could that have been the situation the first time around, when we were living in the home and experiencing bizarre things? I have no idea about those things. Does anyone know if this could actually happen? That's a wild question. Could a living person haunt? And I would have to say that it's possible. A while ago, we covered a story on the show, and it was a woman who was deeply in love and was engaged to a man, and she became pregnant. The man was in the service, and while they were together and she was becoming more and more pregnant, he got deployed over to the Middle East. And apparently she eventually got the news when she was very pregnant that he had been killed by a roadside bomb. And of course, what an amazingly devastating thing to have happen. She's alone in the world dealing with a pregnancy, and now she's going to be a single parent trying to do it all alone, and her love has just died, and just a painful thing. And she said in her story that oftentimes the grief was just so much and the pregnancy was so uncomfortable. So what she would do is just lean with her belly against the kitchen sink on the counter. She would stand there just leaning against it and just bawl. And eventually she ended up having the baby and selling the house, and she moved on, but she stayed in touch with the neighbors. And she got in touch with them and just out of curiosity asked how the house was. How was everything going with the house? How's the new family doing? And the neighbor said, well, they're doing okay, except they think they're being haunted. And the woman said, oh, really? What's going on? And she said they keep seeing the apparition of a pregnant woman leaning against the kitchen sink, bawling and crying. And that woman was very much alive, but she had obviously left some form of psychic imprint. And it now has become a residual event that apparently repeats. And so is it possible for the living to haunt? Sure, we can leave things behind. Not all ghosts are the results of the deceased. It's a very strange phenomena. And again, I can't vouch for the authenticity of the story or the fact that it's absolutely correct and true. But if it is true, that's a pretty powerful thing. That's a pretty powerful statement, and it maybe Maybe it explains a lot about the dynamics of our reality, that we can leave imprints, that there is a lot to do with energy that we don't think. We think that all of our emotions exist in here, within this shell that we're in. And we don't really realize to a complete extent how much we infect and affect the environments we're in. And that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, depending on what you're carrying with you. If you're a happy, loving person, you're going to leave this happy, loving feelings wherever you are. And that's a very powerful thing. But if you're a sad, pained person, tormented soul, you're going to leave that behind as well. So just interesting thoughts. I don't know what you guys think of all that, but I see our stream health is looking pretty sad. Not sure what's going on. This doesn't... I hope it's going okay. Let me check with the chat. Is the stream doing okay? I just have a red bar on my YouTube, but my production software shows a green bar. So I got two. Okay, Lewis says it's fine. I just want to make sure. Okay. Well, then my YouTube is just being funky for whatever reason, but I won't touch anything. I don't want to screw it up at all. So, okay, thank you guys. All right. My camera is blurry. Sometimes that can happen. I don't know. I've turned off the autofocus. It should be on a fixed focus, but for some reason it decides to focus anyway sometimes. So I hope you may want to try reloading if you're noticing a blurry camera, because that can be due to the bandwidth being low on the feed for some reason. And sometimes if you refresh the window, it'll bring you a better picture. Just a thought. But anyway, oh, good. I'm glad you liked it, D. All right, so let's see what's going on here. That was a good story. I really like that one. Let's see what's next. I got a bunch more for you because I came with a whole truckload of fun here in the terms of the paranormal. Because that's how we roll here, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let me get this one open. All right. Let's see what's going on here. This one's coming from Indiana, ladies and gentlemen. Indiana. That's funny. All my ads now are like mixing boards, because when my board fried and we had to like jam and hurry and figure out, I was doing just tons of searches and finding out what another board would be. But now all of my ads, pop-up ads everywhere on margins of websites are mixing boards. It's pretty funny. All right, so let's see what's going on here. This is from Indiana. My mom is a really strong woman, and she's gone through so much in her life that she has examples and warnings for just about every situation that anybody could ever go through. She just doesn't like to share all of her experiences, and she says that some people just have to learn through the experiences and not from someone else's. She also tries to help us out, all of us kids, all 5 of us. I have 2 brothers, or 2 stepsisters, and 1 nephew, and 1 stepbrother, and she loves them as much as she loves my brother and me, even if they don't live with us. She has fought for them, and even when their mama didn't see the need to. My mom hardly ever asked for help, but here recently she finally did. While we were having dinner one night, she explained that she would be working long hours and would like it if we could help with some of the housework for a few weeks. Of course, we all said we could and would, but when it came down to it, she would come home and still have a lot of work to do. And we couldn't do the job as well as Mom, but guess that's why she's the mom. Mom had to go through a few boxes that were left after my papa passed in November, and she kept putting it off, saying that she didn't want his ending to be final. Maybe she thought if the boxes were still there, so would Papa be there. She sent us into the family room to watch television, telling me that she just needed time to go through some things. And that was strange, as she never sends us to watch television. She would rather us read books or play games. But I needed something, so I went to her bedroom door. She was sitting on her bed with a box on her left and crying. Well, that scared me, because my mom never cries. I know she had a hard time with Papa's death. She was holding his hand when he went, and even passed out with the guys when the guys with the bag came in the house to get him. So I stayed where I was, and I watched her, and I didn't know what to do. Well, she tilted her head to the right and kind of whispered, "What?" And I watched the right corner of the bed sink in. And all I really remember hearing her say was that she needed help, and she couldn't do this all on her own. Mama sat on her bed and talked to someone for a while, and then she tilted her chin up and took a deep breath, and just like she always tells us to do when we need to regroup, and she wiped her tears away, smiled, and said, "Thank you, I needed you," and put the box away. I ran away from the door and didn't want her to know I saw anything. I think she sees and hears things that she doesn't want us to know about, and gets a lot of help from the other side. I just wish she would tell us from who. I'm sure it's the grandfather, the papa. At least, that's what that would be my first guess, I guess. Huh. Good story, though. I mean, and I do think that when we talk, they can listen, then they can respond. And I think they will respond. I think many of us have an idea that they'll respond. We're always looking for the big things. We're looking for the big signs. And like the disembodied voice saying, "No, do not do this," or "Yes, do this." Or the apparition nodding yes or shaking its head no. But most often that's not how I think spirits communicate. I think that they communicate through signs and through symbols. That's the easiest way to convey meaning. And so you sometimes have to look at the more subtle things going on to find the answers they're given. And I think we're always guided. I really do. And that can be in the form of whatever you believe. If you believe in guardian angels, if you believe in your ancestors taking part in your journey, or if you believe in spirit guides, or whatever name, face, definition you want to put on them, it doesn't matter. I just think that we're never as alone as we believe we are. And I think that, that help and that spiritual guidance is probably always there. We just got to ask for it, and then we got to learn how to see how they answer. And that's, I think, where the trick is. We think we're just talking to empty air, and we're waiting for the big sign, and maybe all these little signs are going on all around us, and we just don't pay attention because we're waiting for the big sign. All right, so this one comes from Texas. It's a pretty short one. It says, "Hi, guys. Last night was like the biggest and happiest moment ever." And then they refer to somebody named Rupert. Apparently they've submitted more than one story. And says, "Well, if you don't remember Rupert, here's his info. Rupert is 6 years old, a shadow child, and before he crossed over, he wanted to see his mother. He's also a poltergeist. I was in the chat room when someone came into there. Her name is Michelle, and she's haute couture. I don't know. I know that name somehow. I don't know what it means. Haute couture. HAUTECOUTURE. Of course, I asked her first if I may use her name, and she didn't mind, and me and Michelle chatted for a bit. Then I told her about Rupert and my theory of his mother being in heaven, or the light, for those of you who are non-religious, and she told me to tell him to go into the light. So I said, Rupert, do you want to see your mom? Do you really want to see Mommy? I believe she's in heaven waiting for you. Go up to the light, Rupert, and you'll see her. I promise. I said that as gently and as caring as I had a headache, but the headache wasn't so bad until it became horrible. It felt like something was tearing in half in there. I'm clairaudient, so I think it was just our connection, thoughts that were being disconnected. Then I felt I felt like a bit more air was coming around me, like someone just left. And after a minute or two, I felt as if a burden was lifted. Well, I think that I was bearing Rupert's burden also, and I felt happy, excited, and wonderful. And I haven't felt a pinch or a poke since last night, or heard a stomp. So I really think he left, and I have helped others cross over, but I didn't really know them. So this was different. I couldn't wait till I could share this story with you guys, and thank you, Michelle, for the help. And I guess, some of you may or may not believe in the idea that people can help spirits cross, but I think there's something to that. I think there are reasons spirits may be earthbound or, bound to the world, whether it's some kind of emotional attachment or emotional injury or pain in the emotional sense that may keep them from transitioning. And sometimes they just get stuck. And so I think there are psychics and sensitives who can certainly help with that. And I believe there are several of them that are involved with the show, like Dee Swiger and, of course, Deb Varner, Sean Gonzalez, Joel, his friend, Joel Robinson, and a few others that have offered their services to people for free of charge. If anybody's ever dealing with something really negative or aggressive, please reach out to us and let us know, because we have, of course, lots of contact information of those people that are willing and eager to help if anybody needs it. And I think a lot of times people going through paranormal events just feel absolutely alone and isolated. And, Brent, it means one-of-a-kind clothing, meant to describe high fashion clothing. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you, Chacha. I did not know that. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Haute couture or something like that. I know I'm not pronouncing it quite right, but in my head, I know the words, but I just can't remember how they're supposed to be pronounced. So I do apologize for that. So anyway, getting back to that, if any of you guys are going through something dark and scary, please reach out to us, because I will certainly be happy to put you in touch with one of our Paranormal Portal psychic friends who are happy to help. Again, it's free of charge. They're just trying to help people that need it. So, in the worst case scenario is you try it and it doesn't help. Best case scenario, you try it and you get a peace restored to your life that you haven't had for a while. And I'm here to tell you that's a big relief. So, all right, let's move on to the next. This one's coming from Texas. It says, every time I come downstairs to get on the computer, I feel like I'm being watched. Sometimes when someone is staring at you, you can actually feel it. And, well, that's how that feels like. One morning I woke up and I saw a face. I got scared, so I closed my eyes again, and I didn't see anything after that. When I was brushing my teeth one morning, I thought I saw a black shadow, so I screamed, and my mom came, and she asked what happened, and I said I saw a black shadow. And as parents always say, it's your imagination. I told her that it wasn't my imagination, but she said it was just my own shadow, but I saw it about 2 or 3 times, so I don't think so. Last night, I thought I saw something behind my couch, so I got really scared, and I ran upstairs, and I fell asleep real quick last night, and I had a nightmare. And this morning, my blanket was over my head, and it felt like I couldn't breathe. That's creepy. Also, last night, I was in my older sister's room. The hallway lights were off. All of them were. And so I pressed guide on the remote. I was looking out. What? It said, oh, okay, so all the lights were out. Guide on the remote for the TV. All right, these stories are sometimes so fractured, I have a hard time tracking what the hell they're talking about. So guide on the remote, and I was looking, and I wasn't pressing any buttons, and it changed the channel to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then I changed it to Drake and Josh, and it changed it again. So I stared, hugging my dog and freaking out, and then my mom came in and we told her, but she said it's just a timer, and I just don't know if it was just my grandfather. Thank you for reading my stories. If you have any explanation, please tell me. Well, here's the thing. I have a feeling the person writing that story is very young, and I don't want to say that it's harder to believe young kids, but sometimes it is when they're in that in-between age. For a young child, a really young child, like 2 or 3 years old, if they say they're talking to somebody and being just matter of fact about it, yeah, then you kind of believe them. But for an older kid in that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old range, it seems like is it as credible? And I don't know. I think I would probably be a little more skeptical, but still I think it's really important whenever you're addressing a child's fears that you don't dismiss them, that you don't just say, well, it's just in your head. You're fine. It's just something that you're imagining that. It was just a bad dream. Because I think ultimately kids are so much more sensitive and they do pick up things. And when you say it's just your imagination, no, there's no monster under your bed, you're essentially telling your child to turn off that ability that they may or may not have. So I think it's important instead to go, well, do you want me to come with you and we'll look for the monsters and see? And, that's what I had to do with my young minion. He was about 1.5, maybe close to 2. I don't know. I'm terrible with time and ages, but he's only 4 now, so I can only go back so far on this. But it wasn't real long ago, and I've shared this on the show before, so for those of you that have already heard it, I don't mean to be redundant, but I think this is a point that is important to make over and over because, we always have new people listening, but he came to me just terrified. He came running out of a room. He was never afraid of the dark or anything, and he just went into the darkened room, picked up a ball, and suddenly his eyes were just like little dinner plates, and he ran out and said, "Monster, monster, monster." Now, this kid didn't have a real developed vocabulary at this point. He was just new to talking, so he was saying monster, and he was freaked. I mean, he was just flying out of that room. And instantly, I caught myself going, "There's no monster." But I didn't get it all the way out of my mouth. I went, "There's no," and then I went, "Ooh, wait a minute." And then I said, "Did you see a monster?" And he's like, "Yeah," and his eyes are big. And I said, "Did it scare you?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you want me to come with you and we'll check?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so we went in there, I held his hand, and we looked around, and we didn't see him. But then I said, "If you see the monster and it's scaring you, tell it has to go, and then tell Daddy again." And it was just that moment. I knew as a parent, my initial reflex was to go, no, you're trying to console your child and to diminish those fears because you don't want your child to live in fear. And but then at the same time, I think the intentions are good, but the result of that is that you're telling your child not to trust what they feel, see, or hear. And that, I think, in the long run can be damaging. So I try to really watch that in myself. And I don't know if that's the best advice or not. I don't know. I don't know if any parent knows for sure what the absolute best way to do things is, but it's just something that occurs to me that kids often are dismissed. And if they're afraid, that I think it's important for us as parents, for those of you out there that are parents or big sisters or cousins or whatever, I think it's important to acknowledge that and try to help them through it. Now, I'm not talking about safe spaces here and all that stuff. I don't get, that's not where I'm going with this, but I'm just talking about acknowledging something that a child experiences because I think it's important to have a discussion and don't dismiss it because they can be the first ones to experience spiritual events long before we do. I think it's like dogs and cats first, then little kids, and then sometime distant later comes the adults that'll experience something. So don't dismiss the kids. They might be telling you something's building. All right, just my 2 cents for whatever that's worth. And I'm not sure it's worth a whole bunch, but I got the microphone, so that's the way this works. All right, let me look at the clock here and see how we're doing. We got 39 minutes. We're doing good. All right. 61 of you here watching. Thank you guys, for all of you, for being here. I really appreciate the masses of people enjoying the show. I hope you're enjoying it anyway. So this one's coming from Arizona. In 2003, I moved into a new house southwest of Phoenix in a small farming community that stands in the shadows of the Australia Mountains. It is a beautiful area, and many times I am still overwhelmed by its beauty. And it was a tough adjustment for this city slicker at first, but where the only noises I would hear at night were the baying and the yips of coyotes, and yes, there are tumbleweeds here. I only thought they existed in Roadrunner cartoons, but I was wrong. I never felt anything odd about this house or the area. I'd been a cotton field. It had been a cotton field before homes were built. In early 2004, I decided to take in a roommate to help offset the cost of living. A friend of mine, Michelle, moved in with her little Bichon dog. I was reading that. I was like, a what? It's like Bichon. I was like, a what dog? Bichon. is French, I think. A few weeks later, I was out of town for the weekend, and Michelle offered to watch my ferret, Monsoon. I returned late on a Sunday evening and was surprised to see Michelle up, still reading. She said everything went well over the weekend, but she had some concerns over some noises she's hearing, coming from my bedroom. My bedroom was right behind hers, and so she said while laying in bed, she could hear what sounded like boxes being tossed around, and at one point, it got really loud, and she heard scratching noises, so she got up to investigate, and upon entering my room, found absolutely nothing out of place. Monsoon was sound asleep in her cage, and she returned to her room, and suddenly the noises started back up. Surely thinking Monsoon must have somehow gotten out of her cage, she returned to my room, and again nothing was out of place, and Monsoon was still asleep in the same position she had been previously, and after that the noises stopped. I've never witnessed anything, so I pretty much dismissed it, thinking she must have heard Monsoon just messing with stuff or something. Soon after, we woke up at 5 a.m. to the doorbell ringing. I got up to see who was being quite persistent at ringing the bell at such an early hour. Michelle was already in the kitchen looking out the window, and the dog was going crazy. Michelle said, "There's nobody out there." You have a clear view of the front door from the kitchen window, and I stood by her side and watched the front door while the doorbell continued to ring with no one pushing the bell. I brought a chair into the living room and stood on it and disconnected the bell. It was strange, but I really didn't think anything else about it other than it being a malfunction. About a week later, I woke one morning to Michelle knocking on my door, telling me to come quickly. I leaped out of bed and ran to see what was going on, and she told me that she walked into the kitchen in the dark and that the dog wouldn't follow her in. She stood at the threshold whining, and she turned on the light, and much to her surprise, the kitchen linoleum was swimming with thousands of maggots. Ooh, that's a bad sign. Oh my God. They were everywhere. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The floor appeared to be moving on its own accord. I threw on some shoes and grabbed a broom and started sweeping, and Michelle grabbed the dustpan and the brush and did what she could before becoming overcome by nausea. She ran from the kitchen to the bathroom, and I could hear her gagging. The dog remained at the threshold of the kitchen, clearly agitated. I took a couple of deep breaths to get myself from getting sick and began to sweep up the maggots. Oh, that's a horrible thing. I grabbed a trash can bag and kept dumping them in. It took me about 45 minutes to get them all, and I brought the bag outside and tied it in a knot, and upon returning into the kitchen, there were more maggots squirming on the floor. Where in the heck were they coming from? I checked the garbage cabinets, under the sink, under the oven. They weren't coming from anywhere. They just simply were there. They were not confined to one area, and I have a fairly big kitchen, and they were spread out all over the floor. I started sweeping again, and this time they did not come back. I got ready for work and grabbed the bag, which I dumped into the dumpster on my way to the office. At the time, I was working for a traditional Latin Catholic church, and I was also working part-time as a licensed massage therapist at a day spa, but this will come into play later. I told the priests what had happened, and they seemed to believe that something more sinister was at work. I agree. And I really don't know what to believe. I was the first owner of this house. How could this be happening? They believed that something was either attached to my roommate or an object that belonged to her, and that it was now in my house. A gentleman from the church who assists the priest in exorcism agreed to come by my house on a Saturday afternoon to bless it. Well, I followed him from room to room as he prayed in Latin and marked the windows with the cross. After he dipped his fingers in holy water, he placed a St. Benedict medals, St. Benedict was an exorcist, in the four corners of my house for protection, as well as hung a St. Benedict crucifix in my bedroom. Things did stop in the house, but 4 months later, I'd wake up thinking I just heard the doorbell ring, even though it was still disconnected. A couple of times I even got up to check. It made me wonder if whatever it was waiting outside the door but couldn't cross the threshold due to the blessing in the medals. Not long after the maggot incident, I was at my part-time job at the day spa when I had a woman come in needing a massage. She was a religious lady and told me that she was very active with her church. She told me she was trying to get her mother to stop practicing Catholicism. Catholicism. Being Catholic, I asked why, and she said that her mother had called her one night and told her to come over because her kitchen floor was covered in maggots. I thought I was going to have a heart attack right then and there, and I asked her when this happened, and it was determined that this happened the night before my incident. She also went on to tell me that they could find no source for the maggots. She and a girlfriend of hers went to her mother's house and read the Bible out loud. She advised her mother to take down all her religious statues and pictures. My house was filled with religious pictures, but I refused to take something down that I've associated with good my whole life. In fact, they hang there to this day. I did not tell this woman that I was Catholic, and I did not know her from a hole in the wall. This was a very strange occurrence, and I couldn't help but wonder if whatever had caused this to happen at my house knew that in the near future I would meet up with this lady at the day spa. I'm quite puzzled by this one. Regardless, after the blessing, all the strange activity in the house stopped. I still kept thinking I was hearing the doorbell ring the first thing in the morning, but that has stopped as well, and I have long since reconnected the doorbell and have not had another occurrence of bugs or bells. Wow. So that is horrible, horrible, horrible. Now, I don't know. Again, I can't say for sure that that's an absolutely true story or not. It's represented as true. I only read things on the show that are represented as true. But I don't know who wrote it. I don't know what kind of person they are, but I can only assume that it is true. Now, here's the thing with things like that. Those are incredibly profound events. And those are the kind of things that I would truly associate with a demon. Not a cereal bowl moving, not a shadow figure crossing the wall. And so many people use the term demon just so freely. If it's something that scares them, oh, it's a demon. Some people just through their religious spectrum, if anything happens, it's a demon because they don't believe that spirits walk the earth. And, I guess that's up to them. And I don't mean to imply that their paradigm is correct or incorrect. It's their paradigm. But a lot of people misuse the term demon. And but events such as this are what I guess I would equate with demonic activity. Now, this is pretty overt, which is surprising because I think most truly demonic activity will start out incredibly subtle until it has a real strong foothold either in the person or in an environment where they are habitating. And then it's a hell of a thing to get them out, no pun intended. But it's the people throwing around the term demon just to imply anything that makes them uncomfortable, I don't think is accurate at all. I think there's lots of different negative kind of spirits, and I think there's lots of people misunderstanding spiritual events and making them negative just because it can be fearful. It can be a scary thing. But things like this, if your floor fills up with maggots, that's an incredibly powerful event. That's an incredibly powerful manifestation. And quite honestly, I don't think that human spirits or most spirits would be capable of that kind of manifestation. That's pretty over the top. Crazy stuff. But I'm glad that they got onto it. Now, the funny thing was as we were reading this, I found it interesting that somebody would come in for a massage, bash Catholicism to the Catholic lady who just had her house blessed and finally got rid of something really aggressive, named an act that had happened at her house just a day prior, and talked about trying to get the mom out of Catholicism and get rid of all that stuff hanging around. It's almost like a negative. What am I trying to say? A negative manipulation that perhaps this spirit, that was this demonic spirit, was still trying to get access into the house, so tried to convince the woman to discard all that stuff through this other woman. Just speculation on my part, no basis for it whatsoever, but that's craziness. Very wild. But that's a good story. Yeesh. I tell you, And that's why I'm saying, a lot of people talk about, oh, we dealt with a demon. Well, if you really deal with a demon, you're going to know it. I mean, you're going to know it because you're in for a fight. And these are not small little trifling spiritual activities. These are usually almost biblical, in their potency. So, it's not a small thing. Now, I don't mean to try to imply that people should be fearful of demons and stuff. I think be strong in your faith because that's what's going to keep you safe ultimately, whatever your faith is, but just have a faith. But, people throw around the demon name so freely and so easily, and I don't think most people understand what does that mean. So, anyway, I'm looking for a smaller one. That's funny. There's another story right after that has to do with the day spa spirit. This is longer and this one's longer. I think I'll read the day spa spirit. All right. This one's coming from Arizona as well. It is the same person. The same person talking about a spirit at the day spa as well. So I guess it was more than coincidence. In the earlier part of this decade, I worked as a licensed massage therapist at a day spa in North Phoenix, and the day spa offered tanning, nail, and skin care, and other run-of-the-mill spa amenities. It was housed in a very nondescript stucco strip mall and was probably fewer than 15 years old, and one of the hairdressers kept complaining of getting ill there. She wanted the owners to check for asbestos, and no one was getting ill but her, so the owners didn't believe this to be the issue. As it turns out, this lady thought that there was something else there besides asbestos. She believed she believed the place to be haunted. The rest of us employees did not believe this at all. I've been in places, heck, I've lived in places that were haunted and have known pretty much from the get-go that something wasn't right, and this was not the case in the day spa. A few weeks later, this lady up and quit. She said she was getting too ill to stay, and before leaving, she relayed a story to us about a trip she had taken to a psychic. The psychic told her that the day spa was located on what was sacred Indian ground. The psychic said that the spirit of an old Indian chief still remained in the building, and he was very upset with the building being there, and he didn't understand why it was there, and it was clearly his land. He supposedly had a crush on one of the staff, a dark-haired woman, but he didn't know how to get her attention. There were several of us working there with dark hair, and I usually believe such tales, but where I had not physically felt or experienced anything there, I have to admit that I found this really hard to believe. I had been there late at night by myself as well, and never felt or experienced any single thing. One morning soon after, I was sitting in my massage room, sorting out my appointments for the day, when I heard a small fountain I kept in there to make a splashing noise. I got up to inspect the water. Inside was moving. The fountain was not on. On the opposite side of the massage room was a spray-on tanning booth, and the machine broke that morning, and the inside was flooded with water. I helped the owner remove the water using buckets that we dumped into the sink in the restroom across the hall. On a trip to dump the water in the restroom, I happened to glance up at the ceiling and see a fine mist following just above the door. I watched it for a few seconds, and it appeared to be very vaporous in nature, and at first I thought it may be coming from the spray-on tan machine, but the machine, of course, was broken. I looked away for a second, and when I looked back, it was gone. I scanned the ceiling area, but there was nothing. Later on that day, I had just finished up with a client and was heading back to the sink to wash up, and there was a woman collapsed and sweating on the floor. The owner of the salon was seated next to her with a cold compress on the woman's head, and I asked her what happened. Apparently the woman had gone in to a regular tanning bed and got very dizzy. She was headed to the restroom when she fainted in front of the restroom door. The place she collapsed? Right under where I saw the mist near the ceiling. The ambulance came and took her away. The rest of the day passed without incident, but I couldn't help but wonder if it really was that old Indian chief causing mischief to make himself known. Maybe the hairdresser wasn't as crazy as we all thought after all. I guess I'll probably never know. Wow. Pretty wild. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this journey into the paranormal portal. I, of course, love bringing you these journeys, but tomorrow night is Wednesday, so Don will be joining me, and we'll get into our 2-hour show tomorrow night, so I hope you'll join us. Again, every 7 days a week, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, there's a live portal, or a portal. Sometimes I do pre-recorded premieres, but they play just like a live show, so for the most part, you shouldn't notice a lot of difference, other than I won't respond to the chat ever. But I hope you guys will join us tomorrow night for the show. And tomorrow, another podcast launches. If you're new to the show and not really familiar with it, we are a podcast as well. So we do these YouTube shows. And tomorrow's podcast is actually, we just recently had a wonderful visit, interview with a man named Don. Oh my God, I can't believe it's slipping my name. Don Schmidt. I don't know. Sometimes names with me. I'm sorry. Donald Schmidt joined us, and he gave us the real lowdown on Roswell. And this gentleman he was with the J. Allen Hynek Institute as an investigator, the lead investigator on UFO activity and stuff for years and years. He's written 7 or 8 bestsellers on Amazon and Barnes & Noble regarding the Roswell situation, the true story behind the Roswell situation. Well, Don came on the show and really just floored us. And so tomorrow's podcast it's that same episode, but we broke it into 2 parts for the podcast. But it was a great, great show. And if you haven't heard that one, please check out the podcast tomorrow and then again on the next week, because we'll play part 2 next Wednesday. But just an amazing show. One of the best portals I've ever done. I got done with that show and was just like, oh my God, that was an amazing show. So I hope you guys, if you haven't checked it out, I hope you will. If you'd rather check out the video version of that, it's on our YouTube archives right here on the channel. And it was just a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago that he was on. So just a great show. But anyway, the podcast version of that will launch tomorrow. So I hope you guys will check it out if you haven't already. But I guess that's going to wrap it up for us here on the portal tonight. But anyway, let's see, what else was there? I guess that's it for now. If you're not already subscribed, please follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, because if there's ever any announcements about the show, I'm going to be doing it there in that community. So, if you want to stay up to date with things that we're doing. Oh, one other thing. A lot of you have been giving me these great messages about that you really like the song at the beginning of the show. That song is called Feline. It's one I wrote a few years back. I wrote and recorded it. But, I only used those songs for the show because I was dealing with copyright issues. And I'm like, well, they can't complain if I use my own songs. So it was never an ego thing for me. But I'm just really floored by the wonderful feedback I'm getting from that. I get a few crappy ones too, but that's all right. But I'm looking into ways that I can make that available for download, and I will post on our Facebook page when I've got that sorted. It shouldn't be a big thing. I'm probably just going to email to people after a small transaction. I mean, I gotta keep the show going, and unfortunately, it is a song I worked hard on, and it won't be over the top expensive or anything, but just something to help out. But watch the Facebook page for information about that if you're interested in having a copy of the song. But I imagine I'll have that done maybe even tomorrow, but it may be after the weekend, depending on how everything goes tomorrow with the other things that I'm planning on taking care of as well. So I guess that's about it for now. I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here and being a part of the show. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow night with Don here in the studio. So have a great night, everybody, and sweet dreams.